Alright, so welcome back everyone. So this weekend we've got the big fight. Not just a big fight in the UK, but a big fight I think, probably worldwide, right? This is one of the versions of the heavyweight championship and everybody loves a heavyweight fight. But this is specifically big within the UK, right? Because Moses Itauma, he's British, and Filip Hrgović is quite known in the UK, like he was with Matchroom for a while, he was with the Southern. So, Filip Hrgović built up quite a reputation in the UK, right? Beating a couple of our fighters. In fact, his last three? With Adley, Joyce, and Dave Allen. Yeah, his last three fights have been British fighters, so he's built up a bit of a reputation himself, right? So I'm looking forward to this fight. I've heard many different videos, right? Some people saying that it's too early for Itauma. Some people saying that Itauma is going to blast this guy out and really quickly, and Filip Hrgović is overrated. I don't like the words that Filip Hrgović is overrated. What I would say about Filip Hrgović is I personally never rated him as a world champion fighter. Like, I remember listening to the George Groves boxing podcast a few years ago, and George Groves was really high on him. And a lot of people were, but I think I see the talent with Hrgović. I think the problem I always had with him was he was just fighting bin men all the time, right? And that was the issue, right? He was fighting a very low opposition. But overall, I think he's more than capable. Some people have him in their top 10. I'd probably rate him like in my top 12. I'd probably even put him in like number 11, number 12. But if someone has him in their top 10, that's also fine, right? So I think the main thing I'm looking forward to this fight is Atoma's chin's going to be tested, right? Now, Atoma said, my chin doesn't need to be tested. Once if I never get hit, he's going to get hit, right? No matter how good he is, how athletic he is, how, just overall how much of a talent he is, Hrgović is going to land. Now, Hrgović doesn't have the biggest power in the world, right? Those punches from him don't tickle, don't just tickle, they actually do hurt. But, you know, he's not exactly a one-punch powerhouse, right? He's more of a accurate puncher. He'll keep delivering the shots over and over, and he will hurt Itauma. And I think that's the thing I'm looking forward to the most, because if Itauma really believes he's not going to get caught, well, he didn't gas out, but he was breathing a bit heavy in the Jermaine Franklin fight. So when you start breathing heavy, start going later rounds, you are going to get touched up. Now, that's the other thing is, when are people thinking that Hrgović, let's be honest, most people think Atoma's going to stop Hrgović, and I think he will. I think Atoma's going to win this fight by stoppage, but I don't think it's going to be early. I'm going later than most people have suggested. I'm going between rounds 10 and 12. I think Hrgović is going to be in there until very late. He has a very good chin, and even David Adley, I don't rate Adley that highly, right? As in, I don't think he's, world level at all. But he pinged up Hrgović, and he can actually whack. And Hrgović, even though he was on his feet, he was taking those shots like no tomorrow. So, I think Hrgovic's chin is really going to last here. And I think it's going to be the man versus the boy in there, right? I think that's the entire mindset thing people have got going here who have watched Hrgović, is that he's the man, he's been around longer, he's done the amateur game, he's had, quote unquote, as he's kind of put it, the harder route, right? Not being British and being Croatian, right? But I just think Itauma is just that talented. I rarely get the hype on prospects, but I really do think Itoma's that talented. The speed, the fast fiber twitches, the power, how calm he is at just this age. And, I'm one of those people, I like to see people break, do some sort of record. He's not going to break Mike Tyson's record, but he'll break the record in the UK. Because who's the youngest heavyweight champion? I got a feeling it's Herbie Hyde. I feel like Herbie Hyde is still the youngest heavyweight British champion, right? So he'll beat Herbie Hyde's record, which is great. Don't, I'll have to fact check this afterwards. I'm just on the fly right now. But, he's not going to beat Mike Tyson's record, but he came bloody close enough. So, and I have a different opinion, right? I've actually, I'm a big fan of listening to Hatman, right? And I know Hatman said that he wouldn't like to see Atouma become a champion. Not because he wouldn't like to see him become a champion now. It's more that once you're at that level, that's the level you're at. And it's kind of like the question is, why are they rushing, Atouma? Like Mike Tyson, they rushed him because he was an accident waiting to happen at the end of the day. But I think what Hatman's basically said in one of his videos is, once you're at that level, you're at that level. I'm in the other camp. I'm not saying he's wrong, because he's not wrong at all. But I'm in the other camp, but I want him to be at that level. I'd love to see a dedicated guy be at that level and stay there. The questions I'll ask after the fight, if Atouma wins, is what happens next? What's his mental state going to be like? How is he going to handle it? Because you look at the car crash that was Mike Tyson. It's a lot to take on. The fame of being a world heavyweight champion and to gain more belts, depending how fast he becomes, if he wins any more belts. But that's another video. That's the reaction video to talk about what happens to Itauma. Let's talk about the fight right now. So I'm going to my percentages here. I'm going to go 70% that I think Atouma's going to win. And I'd go 60% that I think he's going to win by stoppage. I think he will win by stoppage, but I think he's going to win. So I'd give Hrgović a really good chance of like 30% and 40% going the distance, right? But I won't be shocked if Hrgović wins. It wouldn't make me gasp and I'd, be shocked that he just won. He's a good fighter. He's a really well-respected fighter. I've never thought he was technically the world level. Like, if we're going to talk about world level, right, I'm not on about people who've got a world heavyweight title right now, right? I'm talking about people you actually believe will go on. Dubar's beaten. I think, certain, Ajay Kabayel, I think, has the beating of him, right? I thought when Usyk was around, he had the beating of him, right? But, do I think he beats Gassiev? Yes, I think most people beat Gassiev, right? So, and I'll talk about people who've got a world belt. I mean, people you'd actually go, yeah, they're top 5. They're like the main guys. I don't think he's ever in the top 5 discussion, in my opinion, but I can see him in the top 10 and top 12. But I'm really looking forward to this fight. I just can't wait to see Itauma. I can't wait to see the speed and how he handles Hrgović. I can't wait to see Hrgović land on him, because I feel like Hrgović is going to come out in round 1 and just try to oppose that alpha personality he has. He's going to come out and just do that straight 1-2 and catch Itauma. And I think Hrgovic's plan, which would be smart, is get Atouma's respect really, really early. Show him that you're the man, you're the guy who's been around the block, and then take him later. I can't see Hrgović doing what he did against Dubar. Coming out all guns blazing and then tanking out and then getting beaten up for the next few rounds. I think do what he did against Dubar in maybe round 1, maybe round 2, and then go back to your boxing, because he's an excellent boxer. He's had the amateur circuit. He's got that European style. He can box and stay on the back foot. If Hrgović wanted to, he would be someone who could go the distance if he wanted to. Hrgovic's not that character. He's going to try and knock Itauma out. He's going to try and win the most devastating way he can, if he can do it. But saying that, here's a percentage I'm going to throw there. I'm going 50% that Itauma hits the canvas, because he's had everything in a way his own way. I would not be surprised, and I'm 50% you. I'm even thinking about chucking a bet on that Itauma hits the canvas at least once. No, it doesn't have to be a devastating one. It doesn't have to be like, how Anthony Joshua got knocked down against Ruiz. Just something like, he gets caught and maybe he just goes down a little bit and he's like, whoa, what was that? I wouldn't be surprised. Wouldn't shock me. What would shock me is if Hrgović gets knocked out or stopped in between rounds 1 and 4. That would shock me. And if Itauma can beat Hrgović in under 5 rounds, I'm excited. And I guess a lot of people are going to reference the Dempsey-McKean fight, right? Yes, he got Dempsey-McKean out in, round 1 and Hrgović took him 12 rounds. But you can't, I always say this with boxing, you can't just look at one fight and look at another one. There could be anything, right? You could be ill, your mindset not be right. Like, try and go and do a 2-hour session in the gym after a hard day at work. Try and go do it when you've been ill. Doing any sort of like extreme workout is hard when you're not in the right state and don't feel well. So, I'm not giving Hrgović an excuse there, but I'm just saying you don't go off the fact that, he did 1 round, he did 12 rounds, right? At the end of the day, they both got the same stop, the same win. They both stopped the guy. But yeah, I'm super excited for this weekend. And just a little thing as well, which I'm gutted about, Aloris Jr. and Mike Perez fight is off. Gutted about that. I was really looking forward to that fight. I thought that was a really good step for Aloris Jr. to see where he's at, because Mike Perez is always quite fun. But that's my take. Like I said, I'm going 60%, 70% for Itauma to win, 60% for him to win by stoppage. And I'm going that Hrgović is going to put Itauma on his ass at least once in the fight. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think below. Comment, tell me if you think I'm absolutely smoking something crazy. And yeah, peace out.